The deity of Jyeshta is the king of the gods, the most distinguished among all the citizens of Swargaloga, a position he conquered first by conquering himself and his own weaknesses. Of course, one of the most commonly told stories of Indra is that of being very sensual and very promiscuous, that he would steal the wives that belonged to other men. One day he was cursed quite powerfully that his body would be covered with his favorite delicacy, the female reproductive organ. This served to symbolize how subdued he had become through his own uncontrolled tendencies. But through discipline and self control, and always exercising vigilance over himself, he rose from his state of lustful dullness into one of constant alertness. But this alertness was in truth less directed to external enemies than it was to internal enemies. The Shakti of Jyeshta is Arohana Shakti, which means the power to conquer the subconscious, as weakness can generally be summarized as those tendencies that go unchecked that eventually overwhelm and destroy the body and the mind. There is no vice, no addiction, no emotion that Jyeshta cannot overcome, and in overcoming itself, it arrives at a state of bliss. It is a heaven that is produced internally. It is also interesting that yogis and spiritual aspirants who wish to conquer heaven do so through penance, meditation, and refusing to give in to their own sensual tendencies, and that the beings of heaven conspire against sages by throwing at them sensual temptations represented by the apsaras. Before we enter into the personality section, I kindly ask that you like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel to support my work. Please also join my Patreon to enjoy many more original astrological articles and books. Thank you all so much for your continual support. Jyeshta fundamentally loves to have fun, and fun is their chief motivator. It is what keeps them interested in any given discipline. When they find a hobby or activity that is very amusing for them, they are capable even of sacrificing socializing and sacrificing sleep just to continue to engage in that activity. However, its love for fun is also often adversarial. Because they are always focused on play and enjoyment, it is easy to eventually master whatever activity, whatever discipline, whatever sport, because if one is constantly participating out of pure joy of the activity itself, how will one not succeed? Naturally, those who play arrive at greater competence than those to whom the discipline is boring or an obligation. Jyeshta natives can seem as though they are made of caffeine because they can seem very enthusiastic and very excitable. They tend to be highly energetic and always very alert. Their eyes are often quite penetrating and probing, as if they are trying to actively read your mind, interpret your thoughts, figure out what you're thinking, or figure out what your next move is. Because it is fun for them to treat other people like adversaries in a video game. For this reason, they must always remain alert and ready and observant. It is important for them to figure out what your next move is in order for them to counteract your moves accordingly. They are very good at reading people in general and are very good at interpreting the meaning behind things. Mercury is not merely a planet of observation, but it reads and interprets what it observes. For example, a Jyeshta person may be able to figure out what someone's mood is just by the way that they decide to style their hair that day. They can discover that their coworker is having marital problems just by the different colored tie they've decided to wear. They may even discern that you have suffered the loss of a loved one by the different coffee order you decided to make.
You're gonna sit right there while I figure out what the hell's going on.
Nothing's going on.
Dimple in your tie is too far to the left. That says that your mind is on something else. The only time I've ever seen you wear lavender was when your brother was in the hospital. You're feeling protective in an older brother manner. Whoa.
Arguably, the two most observant nakshatras are Shatabisha and Jyeshta, because both of their symbolism point to having 1,000 eyes. But whereas the 1,000 eyes of Shatabisha are the stars of the night sky, the 1,000 eyes of Jyeshta are terrestrial, as Indra's body was cursed with possessing 1,000 eyes. As an extension of their love of play, they can treat life like a video game or like a sport. They pay attention to everyone as if they were players in a game. The same way that in a video game, one can see a character or avatar's health and stamina and skills on the user interface. It is the same way that they observe others, always aware of what other people's areas of strength are and other people's areas of weaknesses are. They use this information to plan and strategize against their opponents. They don't like to be intellectually submissive or intellectually defeated by other people. They can struggle to accept advice because they don't like to feel as though someone else were in the superior position to counsel them. They hate the feeling of being outsmarted. Someone else could say something clever, they would want to say something even more clever to not appear like the intellectually inferior. If they provide a piece of information and it turns out that it is wrong, and someone else points out that it is wrong, they may employ a lot of mental gymnastics to find a way of portraying themselves as having always been right all along. They are very clever when it comes to argumentation in general. They usually aren't too forceful or loud, but may enjoy employing a lot of rhetorical tricks and fallacies that others may be less familiar with. They may even like to contradict others, not necessarily because what someone else is saying is wrong, but as a way of demonstrating their own abilities and their own intelligence. They are very good even at gaslighting people so they don't appear as though they are wrong. They can suffer from a deep attachment to their own intelligence and their own abilities, or the appearance of their own intelligence and their own abilities, such that they may even go out of the way to give people advice that is unsolicited because they wish to demonstrate how knowledgeable or how experienced they are. They may enjoy constantly speaking on matters that they have little understanding of because a part of them wishes to always impress people with the appearance of expertise. They may often talk excessively and sometimes even contradict themselves as they speak because they start off strongly arguing one thing and then, in the course of their speaking, it is as if they begin to correct themselves and then they end their speech expressing a different opinion from the one that they started with. Really, sometimes they can talk so much that they end up confusing even themselves and end up confusing sometimes other people because of just how much they wish to demonstrate the power of their intellect or their ability. Once again, they can really dislike the experience of appearing intellectually submissive to others or appearing to know less. This can get to such an extreme that they may even randomly contradict others for the sake of quote unquote winning, so they do not appear ignorant or appear like a student to someone else. They really like to stand out and do not want to be seen as common or ordinary. And indeed, they want to stand out as being the most physically capable, the most artistically skilled, the most aesthetically astute, and indeed the most intelligent. And they are always striving to make themselves distinct from their peers, in a good way. They love to wear their achievements on their sleeve like a badge that separates them from others. They tend to pride themselves on what they are capable of and are shameless in expressing this because, again, this is something that can separate them from everybody else. They can wish to make themselves distinguished among their peers so badly that they may even cheat at times in order to win, and they may also employ secret tools and even witchcraft to advance themselves. They are often fascinated by the idea of lucky charms, and so may like to carry many charms with them, but then pretend to other people that these items are merely decorative. Because of their love of adversarial play, they tend to have bright eyes of mischief. They like to plot against others, not usually for malicious purposes, but because they love elaborate games. At their most devious, they may even tell elaborate lies to see if other people would be clever enough to figure out that they've been deceived. Jyeshta natives are always playing, always with some sort of new game up their sleeves. Some that they may openly invite others to play, and others that they force others to play with them. Even their vindictiveness is often an expression of play. They may treat vindictiveness as a quote-unquote ball in their proverbial courts. One good turn deserves another. Player A had his turn, now Jyeshta will have theirs as well. They are always looking for an adversary to play with them. They are interested in provoking others to engage with them. They are also the sorts of people to pretend to hold opinions that they don't truly believe in, but as a means of provoking others into heated exchange and debates, as a means of exercising their own intellect, and of course looking for new playmates. So they may hold controversial political opinions, for example, and openly share them because they want to instigate a reaction. How does Jyeshta behave when in the presence of someone who does not want to play with them? They will employ a wide variety of schemes to get the other person to engage with them. Jyeshta can behave like a small, energetic child that is always looking for a playmate. They may try to provoke jealousy in the other person by showing off their skills and abilities and achievements and belongings to provoke the other person to compete with them in these areas. They may mock the other person to rile them up. They are the sorts of people who will openly declare their own achievements or make claims to certain traits, saying things that irritate other people like, "I'm the smartest person in the room," or "I'm the fastest runner." They do this not only because they are genuinely happy to have achieved what they have achieved, but also because they know that these sort of statements provoke and irritate other people and summon new adversaries. These statements provoke envy. These statements provoke a desire to put the Jyeshta native down. In short, these statements tend to create adversarial dynamics, which again, Jyeshta natives thrive on, and these heated exchanges provoke them into improving themselves. Jyeshta actually goes out of its way to create adversaries. They need to create adversaries for the purpose of play and for the purpose of refining themselves. But for the most part, they are not interested in people who are bitter. They want people who take things in stride, people who do not take things seriously, because again, it is for fun. Jyeshta, in its attempt to create adversaries to amuse itself, may purposely behave in a way that is villainous. They may ridicule others, point out their incompetencies, even behave like a bully and pick on other people and their weaknesses, but deep down, they do this because they're trying to provoke people into competing with them by coaxing out their anger, poking at their insecurities, churning their animosity because they so very much want a playmate. Jyeshta may especially rely on playmates for activities that they may not enjoy doing on their own. Say, for example, a Jyeshta native feels the need to go to the gym, but actually strongly dislikes it. Or say, for example, a Jyeshta native is in a class that they personally dislike, but obviously need to pass. In situations like these, they would want to go work out with a friend, or they would single out someone in the classroom in order to compete with. That way, even if they do not enjoy the activity in and of itself, they may still dedicate themselves to that activity because they either have a friend to motivate them or an adversary to compete against. Jyeshta can sometimes take game playing to a very serious, even sinister level, where they may act like an antagonist in someone else's life purposely. They may single out a particular individual, decide to play elaborate pranks on them. They can even be the sort of friend that purposely puts others in odd and compromising situations in order for their chosen victim to overcome the situation.
As your best friend, I suggest we play a little game I like to call Have You Met Ted?
No, we're not playing Have You Met Ted.
Hi, have you met Ted?
I'm gonna wait until she goes to the bathroom and I'll strategically place myself by the jukebox. So that
Hi, have you met Ted?
Hi.
Let me guess. Ted.
Target acquired! And now it's time we play a little game I like to call Have You Met Ted?
Oh, come on, not this.
Hi, have you met Ted?
No.
Hi.
Hi.
They like to put other people in situations where the other person is forced to develop cleverness or risk being humiliated or otherwise failing and losing in some way. Jyeshta natives don't feel bad for antagonizing other people. In fact, they can oftentimes feel like it is a sort of duty for them to behave a little bit like a villain, even towards the people that they love, because in so doing, the people around them are less susceptible to falling prey to genuinely evil people in the outside world. A Jyeshta native may tell lies, but they actually want people around them to figure out that they are lying. That way, the people around them gain the ability to discern a truthful person from a liar. A Jyeshta father may, for example, playfully lie to his children, but to do so in such a way as to make it obvious to their children that he is lying. In this way, he slowly trains his children into understanding that in the outside world, people do in fact lie, teaching them playfully that there are malicious people in the world, and training them how to discover a liar, how to outsmart a malicious person and overcome them, and to not be too quick to believe people. Essentially, the Jyeshta father wishes to remove naiveness from his children, so that his children can become more naturally street smart and less vulnerable to bad people in the outside world. By way of play, the Jyeshta father would want to train his children to not be foolish or gullible or easily deceived or easily manipulated. A Jyeshta native may speak sarcastically and verbally spar with those around them, but also as a means of training the minds of those around them and the people that they love to be able to defend themselves in the outside world when dealing with their adversaries. A Jyeshta parent or a Jyeshta older sibling would want to create a home environment where there is playful antagonism as a sort of training ground for their children and their siblings, so that when they emerge in the outside world, they are prepared to deal with and defend themselves against people who legitimately wish to destroy them. Essentially, the Jyeshta father or the Jyeshta older sibling, or the Jyeshta parent in general, would wish to become the child's first playful adversary. That way, by way of play, their children become genuinely street smart and wise from an early age. This nakshatra is, after all, the eldest, and so is worldly wise and shrewd. And though it can be very intellectual, it recognizes the limitations of book knowledge, and so it looks for practical means of learning for itself, and also for practical means of teaching others. Jyeshta is once again very dedicated to play, which is why it recedes from the outside world to dedicate itself to its hobbies. So absorbed in playing and playing and playing that it either graduates into a state of mastery in its chosen discipline or arrives at a state of boredom and then moves on to something new. They are very much the stereotypical nerds or geeks because they can sometimes become so absorbed into their favorite pastime that they become recluses and become ignorant of the more common, everyday interests of the average person. And then they may even struggle to relate to the average person because they can only have conversations related to their favorite topics. They may struggle to know what is popular among their peers because the common interests of those of the same age are less interesting to them than their favorite hobby that consumes all of their time and energy. One Jyeshta native may, for example, love computer programming and making their own video games to such an extent that they spend hours every day totally absorbed in this activity, preferring not to go out with their friends, arriving at unique levels of understanding and mastery in this hobby, but then losing his ability to socialize with others, becoming again a stereotypical nerd. Jyeshta natives, for this reason, tend to have an easy time advancing very quickly in every new discipline that they get involved in, not only because they tend to be very enthusiastic about learning, but also because when the mind has mastered one subject, that storehouse of knowledge and ability can sometimes allow it to make unique and original connections in a new subject, which can give a person an advantage. Because of their love of hobbies and because they are very energetic, they can tend to become polymaths, experts in a wide variety of fields. They can be great guitar players while simultaneously being great chefs, all the while keeping relatively high grades at school and keeping up with work.